This is going to be hard, because what you're about to face isn't the polite lie we've been taught about people, but the harsh, disturbing truth. The truth is that people are not as good, loyal, or smart as you expect them to be. History whispered it, Machiavelli wrote it down, and society covers it beneath 1,000 lies that make us feel better. That wonderful things happen, that honesty always pays off, and that power belongs to those who deserve it. But what if none of that is true? What if the underlying engine of human nature is more calculating, darker, and colder than you want to believe? The truth is that most people will betray you if the payoff is big enough and the chance of getting in trouble is low enough. This isn't being cynical, it's how people have always acted. Power and survival often decide what people do instead of morals. For example, trusted advisors who turn traitor can bring down countries, friends can break up over money, and lovers can quit without notice. You already know this. You have seen it. But every part of your mind fights against accepting it, since seeing people in their true, exposed form is too much to take. People frequently think Machiavelli was nasty, but he just made us look at ourselves honestly. He expressed what no priest, no moral philosopher, and no politician looking for votes would ever say: that people are greedy, thoughtless, ungrateful, and easily swayed by fear and desire. But here's the paradox. Knowing this is not a bad thing, it is a way to be free. You stop being a victim of the world if you dare to view it as it is. But that means taking a scary step. Accepting that what you were taught about virtue being rewarded and truth always winning might just be a tale for weak people. So, what do you truly think about people? Do you think your pals would never betray you? Do you think the powerful are where they are because they were the most moral, fair, and deserving? Or do you secretly think that behind every throne, every empire, and every enormous prosperity, there are concealed daggers, broken promises, and cruel plans? And if that's true, what does it mean for the world you live in? What does that indicate about you, though? Which is more dangerous? Because this is the most painful thought. If you are pushed far enough, you can also be cruel, betray others, and only care about yourself. Your pride is telling you the voice inside you that says, "No, not me. I would never." Pride has no place in survival. The human mind bends when the stakes are great enough. Jung cautioned that every individual harbors a shadow, a segment of the psyche that conceals all the impulses we deny. Machiavelli had the guts to proclaim, that shadow is not rare, it is the rule. And most people live by it, even though they say they don't. Does that scare you or make you curious? If this is real, then everything you've learned about trust, loyalty, fairness, and justice falls apart. And now you're stuck in a harsher world where love can disappear quickly, loyalty has a shelf life, and power decides who gets remembered and who gets forgotten. A world where morality is often just a show. If that's the case, then the worst thing you could do is keep living in the dark, thinking that virtue exists where only self-interest does, and that things will stay the same when they are always changing. Why do you feel so bad when people let you down? Because you thought they wouldn't. Why do you feel let down when allegiance breaks? Because you assumed it was a sure thing. Why do you still believe the idea that the good will get the earth? You were taught to like lies that make you feel better, more than realities that scare you. Machiavelli, on the other hand, said that it is not the good people who live. It is the watchful. Not the innocent who do well, but the smart. And the more you fight this truth, the more open you are to being manipulated, hurt, and defeated. The question is like a knife at your throat. Would you keep living in the illusion that people are what they say they are? Or will you take off the mask and face what Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and history's harsh mirror have already informed you? That behind every smile is a calculation, behind every promise is a condition, and behind every alliance is a changing balance of power. You don't have to answer right now. Be okay with the pain. As the ground under your conviction starts to crumble, you can feel the dread in your chest. You can only really appreciate what's at stake, your sanity in a world that feeds you lies, by going into this darkness. If you can get through this initial break in your worldview, you're ready to move on to the next step. Finding out why this hidden power exists at all, and how it has affected every aspect of human nature since the beginning of time. The first wound is comprehending that people are not guided by virtue, but by self-interest. The second wound is learning why. Why is it so easy to betray someone? Why does loyalty wane when the wind of opportunity changes? Why do people so quickly give up truth for ease, fairness for profit, and morality for survival? The answer is hidden deep inside ourselves, in the parts of our nature that most people are too afraid to address. You have to go into the shadows, into psychology, philosophy, and the dark hallways where intellectuals like Jung, Nietzsche, and Machiavelli left their warnings, in order to grasp it. Carl Jung talked about the shadow self, which is the part of you that holds all of your repressed feelings and thoughts, as well as those that society tells you are wrong. Anger, jealousy, selfishness, and cruelty are all feelings that never go away. They wait. They are watching. When the situation calls for them, when survival, pride, or desire are at stake, they rise to the top. The shadow is what makes normal people do terrible things in war, what makes a loving buddy transform into a cutthroat rival, and what makes a spouse who promised to be faithful for life leave without thinking twice. The shadow is not separate from you. It is interwoven into you. Nietzsche went even further. He contended that morality is not absolute, but rather a construct devised by the weak to constrain the strong. Good and evil are not unchanging facts, they are tactics. The downtrodden, unable to confront authority directly, establish moral standards to induce compliance from the powerful. Nietzsche, on the other hand, said that the will to power is what drives every human being. He said that even the saint wants dominion over his followers, his passions, and the story of virtue itself. What you think of as goodness could just be another way to be in charge. Niccolò Machiavelli, centuries before to Nietzsche, removed the mask with more brutality. He said that rulers can't live as if people are good, because they aren't. They are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and greedy. To lead people, you need to know how to control fear and how to look good. Fear is a stronger leash than love, and how you look is more important than what you say. He said that the basic problem with human nature is that individuals are not mainly interested in justice or virtue. They are interested in getting ahead. Whoever gets this is in charge. Whoever rejects it is in charge. This is why so many people naively walk into disappointment. They want someone to be loyal to them, but that loyalty is just based on the situation. They want someone to be honest, but that person isn't honest when things go tough. They anticipate someone to be grateful for favors, but that person forgets about them as soon as other wants come up. They hold on to false ideas of human goodness because false ideas are safer than true ones. But safety bought with lies isn't safety at all. It's weakness that looks like comfort. This energy is based on survival in the mind. The brain evolved not for accuracy, but for efficiency. Not for justice, but for adaptability. Every brain circuit is bent toward one goal, keeping the self safe. If betraying a friend means getting food, survival means betraying them. If lying protects your standing, survival means lying. If giving up virtue means getting power, then survival means giving up. These are not moral flaws, they are techniques that have evolved. What you find morally repulsive is often what keeps you alive biologically. But here's the catch. We have to pretend because we live in societies that are based on trust, cooperation, and shared values. The idea that loyalty, honesty, and morality are absolute is what keeps civilization going. But the raw psychology of dominance never goes away, even under that weak structure. Every smile masks a plan. Every pleasant gesture is motivated by self-interest, and every act of loyalty comes with a cost. Some people know about this game, but most don't. But whether we know it or not, the game plays itself, changing the course of history. The result is a deep and frequently unspoken contradiction. Individuals have to look virtuous, but they behave in their own best interests. They have to praise loyalty, but they leave when it's in their best interest. They must speak the truth, yet they lie when it helps them. This contradiction eats away at relationships, institutions, and identities from the inside. And since most people can't face it head-on, they make up explanations, excuses, and moral justifications to hide the real reasons for their actions. The lie is so deep that even the self is duped. You don't simply lie to other people, you also lie to yourself about why you do things. So when you feel let down and ask yourself, how could they do this to me? The solution is simple. They did it because it was good for them. They did it because the psychology of survival rules under the theater of virtue. Not why they did what they did, but why you thought they wouldn't. This is the secret core that Machiavelli makes you face. The problem isn't only that people lie, betray, or switch sides. The bigger problem is that you think they won't. You hold on to false beliefs, and then you hurt as reality breaks them apart. You will stay stuck in disappointment and blind to power unless you break that expectation and face the secret framework of human nature. Now that the setting is prepared, the most disturbing truth will come out. Not only why individuals act this way, but also how this secret psychology impacts every element of your life. You might believe that you are free, logical, and self-sufficient, but in reality, fear, want, and the need to survive are what make every decision, including yours and everyone else's. And the results of neglecting this are much worse than you think. You think you can go wherever you choose in life, but what if the currents below the surface are pulling you without your knowledge? The fact is that the unseen forces of human nature determine not only individual behaviors, but also whole societies, economies, and destinies. Betrayal, selfishness, and the unending quest for advantage are not outliers. They are the covert architects of reality. And most folks don't see them coming. Think about your connections. The same psychological mechanisms we talked about affect every friendship, partnership, and professional connection in a subtle way. Cognitive biases, such as the self-serving bias, the inclination to interpret events in a manner that advantages oneself, guarantee that individuals unconsciously rationalize their behaviors, even when they are detrimental to others. The recent effect, the illusion of reciprocity, and selective memory all work together to change loyalty and thankfulness. You trust someone because your brain needs patterns and wants to believe in morality, fairness, and continuity. And when the inevitable break happens, the emotional toll is huge. But the break wasn't random. It was expected and built into the hidden rules of human conduct. Society operates under a similar insidious oppression. Not principles, but hidden incentives run institutions, governments, and businesses. People sometimes choose leaders not because they are good people, but because they can change how things look and take advantage of others' weaknesses. Fear, want, and power shape policy more than justice does. Machiavelli knew this hundreds of years ago. Men are driven by two main impulses, love or fear. But fear is far more dependable than love, and looks are much more powerful than truth. The world that punishes idealism and favors strategic calculation is one where morality is optional and perception is law. Your brain is involved in this system on a neurological level. The prefrontal cortex, which controls planning and logical thought, is always talking to the limbic system, which is where desire, fear, and self-preservation come from. Every decision you make is a trade-off between your moral values and your need to stay alive. You could think that you just act on principle, but your impulses really do affect your choices in ways that you don't always notice. You are not completely free from the machinery of self-interest. You are its creation, and so are they. Culture also makes these forces stronger. Every myth, fairy tale, and moral lesson strengthens the idea that being good will get you what you want, that being honest will win, and that loyalty will last forever. But culture is both a shield and a trap. It hides the underlying mechanics of power, offering people a soothing story while gently training them to act in ways that are good for them. You believe in morality, but culture is a tool for survival, a subtle rule that guides conduct toward hidden benefits instead of truth or virtue. If you don't pay attention to these dynamics, your life will slowly fall apart. You put your faith in the wrong people, and then they let you down. You look up to leaders, yet they use you. You depend on systems that promise justice, but they don't work out that way since they are based on their own calculations of what is best for them. Every grief, every failure, and every betrayal is a sign of the same thing. Human nature, when it is not hidden, follows patterns that are neither fair or moral. And because most people don't perceive these patterns, they keep falling and hurting themselves for no reason. The devastation is not just on the outside. The effects you can't see affect who you are and how you see yourself. You can start to doubt your judgment, your ideals, and even your worth. You could wonder, am I naive? Am I weak? Why do I keep getting blindsided? But the truth is that you weren't weak. You were led astray by the very nature of being human. Your hopes were based on something that wasn't real. And until you fully comprehend the magnitude of these forces, your understanding of justice, morality, and loyalty will perpetually remain susceptible to disruption. This is the silent, unseen trap that controls life. The world doesn't work on virtue or fairness. It works based on power, self-interest, and the secret desires that Machiavelli so brutally exposed. Every mistake, every betrayal, every heartbreak is a sign that you've been fighting an invisible struggle without even knowing it. But the chance is not in giving up, but in realizing. You get a rare advantage when you spot the trap and admit that there are currents beneath the surface. Awareness. Being aware lets you plan ahead, make decisions, and act clearly when others can't see what's going on. And this is when the story changes. Knowing what will happen next is not a reason to be cynical. It is the first step toward mastery. But if you want to claim mastery, you have to let go of what you thought you knew about trust, morality, and human nature. You need to start a rebellion, but not against the world. Instead, you need to fight against the lies that have controlled your actions for too long. The question is no more, why do people lie, betray, or fail? How do you rise above these unseen influences and take back control of your life, mind, and future? To find the answer, you will need to change your point of view completely. This will turn common sense on its head and give you more power than ever before. But before that, you need to face the entire range of the forces that are working against you and feel the need to get away from their silent hold. when you realize that there are unseen chains surrounding your life, like the silent force of self-interest, lies, and human calculation. You have to choose between giving up or fighting back. And rebellion isn't loud, theatrical, or heroic as you've been taught. It is subtle, radical, and very personal. It is the act of seeing things clearly, rejecting the lies that make you feel better, and taking back control of your thoughts and actions. This is where Machiavelli's perspective changes from a disturbing fact into a guide for survival and success. The first step in this resistance is to face the truth. You can't combat something you can't see. You need to understand that fear, desire, and self-interest control conduct more than love, morality, or virtue. Every betrayal, every disappointment, and every manipulation teaches us something about how people work. Once you realize that individuals aren't inherently good, you can't be fooled by the idea of virtue anymore. You stop expecting people who aren't loyal to be loyal, people who aren't honest to be honest, or people who aren't fair to be fair. This is the first act of power. Looking ahead, historical examples show how powerful this awareness may be. Think about Cesare Borgia, the man Machiavelli looked up to because he was smart. Borgia didn't demand loyalty. He knew that looks, tactics, and planned dread were the best ways to get people to do what he wanted. He acted quickly because he knew that men follow those who know how power really works. Or look at the people who started empires throughout history. They didn't survive because they were better people. They survived because they understood what others wanted and were afraid of, and used that to their advantage. You can also think this way, not to oppress, but to protect yourself and take back control in a world that thrives on your ignorance. The next phase is to have control over your inner world. You can't make other people do things, but you can choose how you react. Machiavelli knew that rulers fail not only because of adversaries, but also because they make mistakes, act on impulse, and are weak emotionally. The same goes for you. You are powerless if you are ruled by anger, pride, or naive hope. But if you educate your mind to perceive motives clearly, calculate repercussions without emotion, and act with a clear plan, you become untouchable in ways that others can't understand. This is not being separate from people. It is being in charge of them. This is where Stoic philosophy fits in well. Epictetus said that it's not the events themselves that bother us, but how we think about them. You need to move the center of power inside to break free. Don't pray for the world to be fair. Instead, work on making your mind strong, adaptable, and alert, no matter what others do. The insurrection is mental before it is physical. Being free means being in charge of how you see things, how you react, and how you plan. The next step is to be completely clear about your alliances and connections. You need to learn to perceive intentions for what they are, not what you want them to be. You don't just give someone your trust. You earn it by watching them, seeing patterns, and acting the same way over time. This doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you smart. Machiavelli emphasized that a smart ruler doesn't just believe in promises. They also use their wisdom, insight, and careful judgment. The same goes for your life. Know who benefits from your allegiance, who takes advantage of your innocence, and who wants to use your good character to their advantage. Power comes from knowledge. The fourth phase, which is often missed, is strategic restraint. Anger, retribution, desire, or actions fueled by the ego can all make people want to act right away. But the best winners in history knew how to be patient, time things right, and take smart risks. They didn't hit when they felt like it. They hit when it was to their advantage. You need to learn how to be just as restrained as they are, making quick decisions while seeming quiet, and moving like a shadow while others stumble in their commotion. This is where morality and strategy meet, not in giving up something, but in making a deliberate choice about when and how to use power. Think about how this uprising let people free mentally. Fear will no longer have a hold on you once you understand these ideas. Betrayal turns into information, not destruction. Manipulation turns into insight instead of sorrow. You start to move through social and work situations with a remarkable sense of clarity. You can view what others are doing without getting involved. You are no longer a piece, you are a player. This change is not just on the surface, it is deep. It alters your rapport with authority, aspiration, confidence, and existence itself. But the rebellion isn't finished until it includes self-integration. Recognize that you have the same urges as other people. You have the darkness, the desire for power, and the self-interest inside you. The goal is not to deny, but to master. You stop being unconsciously controlled by these forces when you recognize and accept them. You learn how to use them for a reason. You become a force that operates on purpose instead of reacting in a random way. So revolt isn't violence, it's freedom. Freedom from being caught off guard, freedom from being let down, freedom from false hopes. And this is where the route leads to the next reality, the ultimate truth. The revolt is the link between being conscious and being in control, between being disappointed and being strong. By refusing to be a victim of human nature and instead embracing clarity, discipline, observation, and restraint, you put yourself in a position to realize a deeper, more disturbing truth. One that doesn't simply impact how you see people or power, but also how you see life in general. The truth is that the world is not only harsh and planned, you may thrive in it if you are brave enough to view it clearly. Now comes the big reveal, which changes everything you thought you knew. All the fear, the betrayal, the psychological insight, and the planned insurrection come together here in one undeniable reality. The universe is neither just nor unjust, moral nor immoral. It is terrible, amazing, and freeing all at once. It just is. Reality doesn't follow the principles of fairness or goodness. It only listens to its own logic, its own forces, and the results of its actions. And the strongest beings are the ones who can see clearly enough to accept that fact, instead of fighting it out of ignorance. What does this mean for you? It means that all the pain you've been through, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the letdowns, wasn't just because of wickedness or malice. You thought that the universe would bend to your sense of right and wrong, which is why it happened. That you thought honesty was a guarantee, loyalty was a given, and virtue was a protection. Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and Hume all say the same thing over and over. Your values don't matter to the human situation. Only those who are alert, aware of their surroundings, and have a plan for how to get through life survive, and in very few cases thrive. The paradox is that trusting others blindly does not lead to true freedom. It comes from having complete faith in oneself and knowing the rules that govern all other games. People who have mastered this perceive life as both a battlefield and a chessboard. They know that how things look is just as important as what you do. That fear is a greater instrument than love, and that power is not something you can buy. It is a state of mind. When you do what these realities say, you go above normal morality. Not in a vicious or destructive way, but in a clear way. You are free from delusions, and that freedom gives you incredible strength. Living this manner means taking on radical responsibility. You are in charge of your decisions, how you react, who you work with, and your plan. You can't blame being disappointed on other people's unpredictability or life's injustice anymore. People are who they are, but how you respond is what matters. Marcus Aurelius said that we are not upset by things that happen, but by how we feel about them. This isn't just philosophy, it's a way to stay alive. When you take complete responsibility for how you see things and the choices you make, you enter the world of actual power, where your mind, not your situation, dictates the outcome. But there is a shadow that comes with freedom. Being aware is hard. To see clearly is to experience the full weight of human nature. You can't help but see the betrayals, the lies, and the strategic plans that are always around you. You experience a new weight in relationships, a new look at people's motives, and a clearer awareness of the factors that affect results. But this weight isn't a burden, it's armor. The more you understand what's going on below the surface, the less likely they are to sweep you away. You have more control, the better you can view the game. History can help us here. Think of people like Elizabeth I, who carefully planned relationships, marriages, and public opinion to keep her kingdom safe from treason. Instead of perceiving Machiavelli's prince as a dictator, think of him as a strategist who knew that to survive, have power, and leave a legacy, he had to see beyond appearances. These beings were not morally perfect. They were mentally clear, socially aware, and good at planning. That is your model. Not perfection or purity, but clarity, awareness, and planned action. The last understanding is that power is not given, it is recognized. It is recognized in the quiet comprehension of human nature, in the control of one's impulses, and in the intentional formation of choices and perceptions. It is found in seeing the world as it is and doing what is right, even if it makes you uncomfortable. And with this clarity, everything else falls into place. Choices become clear, relationships become strategic, and your inner life becomes a stronghold against disappointment. But maybe the most poetic thing about this truth is that it doesn't take away from humanity, it makes it stronger. To comprehend human nature in its unadulterated essence does not diminish beauty, love, or connection in life. In fact, it lets you appreciate things more deeply. Love turns into a choice, loyalty turns into a merit-based thing, and alliances turn into something you plan. Because you are not a blind participant, but a conscious agent, every encounter and action becomes more important. You are awake in a world that is asleep, and that awakening gives you a lot of power. Now that you are on the edge of this revelation, you have a challenge that few people ever take on. To bring this consciousness into every thought, relationship, and choice you make. To not live in denial, but in control. To act not out of naive hope, but out of a well-thought-out plan. To understand human nature without delusions, without feeling entitled, and without giving in to chance. Because once you see the world as it really is, nothing will ever feel the same again.
You find what Machiavelli, Nietzsche, and Jung all tried to teach in that change, that the most powerful thing is not to have influence over other people or situations, but to have power over oneself. To realize this fact is to take back control of your life. It is to rise above the disappointment and deception that keep you in the dark. To rise beyond the fear and want that pull you down, and to navigate through the chaos of human life with unwavering clarity. The world will still be cold, cruel, and calculating, but not now. You are now aware, you are awake now, and in this awakening comes the only freedom worth seeking, the freedom to act without fear, without limits, and with full awareness of the harsh truth of human nature.